All right, hey there. I don't really make too many videos that much more, you know, lately. But since it's like around, May the 4th, Revenge is out now. At least for the next few years. Clone Wars just ended. The Skywalker saga just wrapped up. Like everything is wrapped. Like it's done for now. Until whatever gets created in the future. So I just wanted to make a video where I talk about just my favorite Star Wars properties in general. And I mean, when I say that, I mean like, movies, shows, things of that sort. Things of that sort. Um, yeah, so I just kind of wanted to like list them from like worst to best. Well, not worst because honestly, I love everything Star Wars. I enjoy them all. There's always something that I enjoy in every single movie, every single show. Like, I love so much of it. So, um, that being said, I want to do a list from like my least favorite. Let's call it that. My least favorite to my absolute favorite. Just Star Wars, anything in general. So, and I'll give like a couple reasons why I like it, and then probably a few reasons why. There are reasons why I can understand why people don't like it, or things that I find problematic about it, and just that sort of thing. It's my least favorite of all the kind of Star Wars properties. And I know there are plenty of people who like it, and we got Clone Wars off of it, which was awesome. But overall, the movie, to me, how I feel like when I watch it, is like it's. I think it starts off pretty good, like with the opening sequence with Anakin and Obi-Wan, going to the city trying to, chase, for the try to chase the criminals or whatever. But I feel like most of the movie is kind of a slog, and you're kind of just waiting, especially after you see it for the first time. You're like, okay, every time I watch it, I just kind of want to get through the middle of it so I can watch the very end, which I think most will agree was awesome. You get to see the big fight in the stadium, with all the Jedi. You get to see Mace Windu fight for the first time, which is awesome because that's a character that I love. He had the purple lightsaber, which is sick as fuck, and you get to see Anakin, older Anakin fight against Count Dooku with Obi-Wan. He gets his arm cut off, and then you get to see Yoda fight for the first time, and that is incredible. It's amazing, But unfortunately, the rest of the movie and the very infamous line that everybody knows about the sand, things like that, just kind of really it. It dragged the whole movie down. So next up, I'm gonna talk about Solo. I know there's a lot of people who didn't see this movie because obviously, uh, I mean, and I get it. It's the same way I felt. Harrison Ford is Han Solo, and the people they brought in, they did good, but when you're watching it, obviously, you're not sitting there like, oh yeah, this is a Han Solo. You know what I mean? Or this is Lando. As much as I like people like Donald Glover, and they had Amelia Clark in there, who's an actress that I love. I love Game of Thrones, until the last season. But anyway, uh, yeah, it overall the movie was decent. Like all the way through, it was decent. It was a fun story, but I mean, I think that was the only reason is it was just kind of like it was decent throughout. There were some parts where you're like, okay, that's fine, but overall it was just okay. There weren't any moments that really stood out. They had the kind of cameo at the end with Darth Maul, who's my favorite Star Wars character ever, and that I loved. But yeah, overall, it just felt like it was a movie that wasn't really needed at the time. I hope they do. I hope they take more chances and do a bit more with the Obi-Wan movie. Uh, I think that's one thing about Disney in general with these movies since they've gotten them is they need to take more chances. Like if they're gonna make movies that people end up not liking them, at least it's because they, you know, took some chances. But anyway, let me move on. So next up is Phantom Menace. And I know a lot of people will put this at the bottom of their list a lot of times, but Phantom Menace is very similar to Attack of the Clones, where you kind of want to get to the end to the Darth Maul fight because it's one of the best Star Wars fights ever. It's the first time you see somebody with a double-sided lightsaber. You see somebody with a lightsaber that's different than anything we've seen before. It's the first time you see that. That's the first time you see just these acrobatics and all this crazy lightsaber fights, and like that's the first movie that does that. That being said, a lot of the rest of the movie is a lot like Attack of the Clones, where you just kind of want to get through it a lot of times. You're like, oh, okay, well, I need to get past the, stuff with the Gungans and the underwater stuff and the little awkward conversations, the, bad child actor, all this stuff. But what saves Phantom Menace and why I put it higher on this list than the other two that I said before, that I said prior, is because they had, first off, Darth Maul, who does show up in the, other parts in the movie, and he's awesome. And second off, they had pod racing. And, oh man, the pod racing is still some of the coolest. It's just so cool to see. It's like, just from that kind of thing, or when you played Knights of the Old Republic, when you would do the swoop bike racing and stuff, those are just parts of Star Wars that I also enjoy a lot. The underground syndicates, the Pazak. I never know how to say the word because I never actually heard anybody say it out loud, like in the movies or anything or the shows. But the Pazak, whatever that they had in Kotor, and just that all that kind of like stuff that you don't normally see. Because it's kind of like this underground thing. Like I love to see that stuff, and that was really fun. And we got that amazing N64 pod racing game off of it. So yeah, the Phantom Menace to me had more enjoyable things. So next up, I'm gonna say Star Wars Rebels. Um, Star Wars Rebels, just like Clone Wars, another show that was being run by Dave Filoni, who is somebody along with like John Favreau and everything, who, as far as Star Wars properties go, these two I can really trust a lot. They do some amazing things, and they understand like the undertones and the underlying meanings of Star Wars that I feel like George Lucas was trying to put out there when he made the originals and the prequels and all that. They just understand, Uh, and Rebels has a lot of really cool moments. The fight between Ahsoka and Vader, Ahsoka being another character that I love, but I'll get more to that later. Um, the fight between Maul and Obi-Wan, well, Ben Kenobi, I guess, at that time, which is not what you expect, but it's very satisfying. There's a lot of really good moments in Rebels. The reason I put it low, though, is because for the most part, Rebels, the rest of the time that you watch it, is just a standard kid show where it's like episodic, and there's just kind of like, you know, weird little whatever kind of episodes that go on, and you kind of like, you watch those, maybe you get through those so you can get to the episodes where like they expand on the lore, or they do callbacks to things in the Clone Wars and the other movies prior, and that's when Rebels is great. But on the other end, there are times when Rebels is it's kind of hard to watch. Sometimes you're like, okay, like I get it, it's a kid show, I get it, but so they have to have kind of episodes like that. But yeah, that's the only issue that I have with Rebels. All right, so next up, we're doing everybody's favorite movie, The Last Jedi. Um, Although I'm not like everybody else who hated you know, the sequel trilogy and um, hated Rose and stuff. I actually enjoyed Rose as a character. I think that yeah, she was mostly just the Canto Bite scene was not needed, but Yeah, I mean, I definitely have my issues with The Last Jedi. Like, it doesn't seems like they didn't really communicate JJ and Ryan about where that movie should have gone, which kind of the consistency and the continuity between all the movies kind of got a little messed up, and you can tell between Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker. So it was very awkward. Um, but that being said, The Last Jedi had some good stuff. Although I felt like Finn was underutilized a lot of the movie, there was a great fight between him and Phasma, which I thought was cool. And I'm not mad about them killing off Phasma, who was a really cool character. But because it's the same thing as Boba Fett, you know? And I guess it's possible that Phasma could survive. Like, people have survived worse in Star Wars, so you never know. Boba Fett apparently survived, in Return of the Jedi, so I don't know. I don't know if that's still canon, but I remember they said that he survived. But anyway, uh, there was the Holdo maneuver, which is an amazing, just like amazing cinematography. That whole scene is awesome. And I know a lot of people hated that there wasn't an actual lightsaber battle in that movie, but two things I really liked was the subverting your expectations that Snoke was actually somebody important, just killing him. Like, I didn't expect that, and I like when movies do things I don't expect. I know it's Star Wars, and that's not usually the route they go, but that I did like. And I liked the fight between the guards, and then Rey and Kylo kind of teaming up. That was really cool. Like, it was nice to watch. It was well choreographed. Like, it was awesome. That being said, The Last Jedi definitely did a lot of things to the continuity that didn't make sense in it. You left with way more questions at the end of that movie than you had answers. And you feel like, uh, especially, just hearing the cast and then like JJ and all these other people, how they talk about these things, you can tell that that wasn't the plan. So, and it didn't help that Colin, I can't say his name, Colin Trevorrow, uh, kind of backed out of the last movie because I think he probably had a certain plan, and maybe The Last Jedi had something to do with that. I don't know, but definitely the most controversial Star Wars movie ever, and I understand that. That being said, I I found a lot of enjoyment in it when I rewatched it recently. I'm like, okay, I can understand that. There's definitely some very weird things, like Leia being blasted out into space, and then she force pulled herself back in, and just yeah, there's a lot of things that introduce the power where like Rey and Kylo can kind of connect to each other and like see each other through the Force. And then obviously in Rise of Skywalker that becomes more, but we'll talk about that later. Um, but yeah, I get it, but I liked it more than the other things that I listed before, so that's where it goes. All right, so next up, and some people will probably be mad at me about this, but this is how I feel. Return of the Jedi. So I love Return of the Jedi. It's one of the originals. It's an awesome movie. I love it, but it is my least favorite out of all the original trilogy movies. Um, I mean, you love the scene where Luke shows back up. He's got the green saber. He fights the Rancor and everything. And he's in Jabba's place, and then they go out there. They have the whole fight scene on those the floating barges, and he fucking sends uh, Boba Fett flying off, and he dies, and that's awesome. And you got scenes like him going against Vader, and then the Emperor trying to turn him, and there's a lot of cool stuff. But then you also have stuff like the Ewoks fighting on, you know what I mean? And they have that joke with the fighting on the forest moons of Endor, and the stormtrooper like hidden the side of the tree and all that stuff, and it's like it's cool and I like it, but there are definitely parts in Return of the Jedi that are uh, to me less enjoyable. You know what I mean? Like, I like the Ewoks; they're cute, but also I felt like it was kind of an underwhelming finale with them in it. That was just me. Like, the Ewoks to me are like the Gungans, not as bad as the Gungans, obviously, but that's why it's higher. But that's how I felt about them. Like overall, Return of the Jedi is still a really good movie, just like any of the other original trilogies. But I just felt like it was less so than the other original trilogy movies, and some of the ones I have higher than it. So yeah, I mean, that's how I feel. All right, so next up, I have Rise of Skywalker. So I kind of put it like middle of the road because I mean it's still pretty new, and that's how I feel. Like it's kind of in the middle for me. I have rewatched it since it came out on like Disney Plus and everything, and still feel the same way about it that I did when I left the theater. Obviously, it's really hard to like as a filmmaker. It's hard to make movies, and losing somebody like Carrie Fisher in the middle of filming, like that has to be tough. And I know, I know they talked to her daughter Billy, and she felt like, yeah, I think you should put her in there and everything. I think she would have been fine with that, and I think they did a good job putting her in there. But from an outside perspective, when you know that Carrie is gone, it was a bit awkward. That being said, I think they did use the repurposed scenes of her. I think they used them well. Um, yeah, and they used the body double and everything, and I think they used them well. Uh, and then Rise of Skywalker honestly had a lot of things that I enjoyed. They had a lot of callbacks to other Star Wars movies and everything. Obviously, they had some things that didn't make any sense, like the dagger, and a lot of fake out deaths with like original characters, and some like force power things that I know people didn't like, but I'm fine with that because Star Wars has always been about that. It's like every property you get a new force power, you get a new, ability. Like everybody has different abilities. There's ones that from Legends and stuff that were like ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like they were crazy, and we haven't seen those yet. They could bring those back. You never know. But I'm always down for any like new force power. I know that people think that there's like certain rules to Star Wars, but there's not. Like, I get it, but yeah, I mean, they're different Jedi and Sith and everything do different things, and I get the whole like Rey and Kylo had a certain connection that they're able to do what they did. Um, and then you also feel like a lot of the movie is kind of JJ trying to make up for things in that were in the Last Jedi. Like it's pretty obvious because it's obvious that was not the plan, and he was trying to fix that. One thing I didn't like is that he reduced Rose's role way too much, and I feel like he's kind of letting the internet trolls win with that one, which is like it's a shame. I get why like she wasn't exactly like needed that much in the movie. She got some lines, and then he gave some lines to like Dominic Monaghan, which is like okay, he wasn't in any of the movies before, but now he's just like I don't know. It was kind of awkward, but yeah, I understand why he did it. I didn't like that, but like I get it. Um, I also feel that, like I said, every single movie, I feel like Finn's role has become smaller and smaller, and he kind of became reduced to like a very minor like side character by the end of the movie. But I also think that has a lot to do with the Last Jedi, because I feel like him and Rey started off with like a romance kind of thing, and that just kind of like went away out of nowhere. I don't know. That's how I felt. And then of course there's the romance between her and Kylo all of a sudden, which was awkward. But that being said, a lot of things I liked in the movie. They brought Billy Dean Williams back, who I love Billy Dean Williams. He's just even at like I don't remember how old he is right now, but he's very old and he still has that charisma. It's amazing. Um, I liked the I liked that Rey was a Palpatine. I know that some people didn't, but I like that Rey was a Palpatine. I know that the original plan for if Lucas was gonna make the movies, because I'm pretty sure it was based off of the book that had come out after the originals and everything, was that Palpatine cloned himself, and he was pulling the strings, and he used his clones and everything so that he could come back and try to build another empire. And yeah, I mean that's fine. I think that was like the plan, and they got to it. I think things might have been changing in between, movies and everything, but I think they got to what it was supposed to be. So, like I said, I'm fine with that. Um, and then the end to me is really good, and that's like ending a movie is very difficult, but I think that they nailed it in my opinion. Like the final fights, uh, kind of seeing Kylo Ren go back to being Ben, seeing you know him and Rey's connection come down to like she passes her lightsaber off to him, and that power like does something for them, and seeing the Emperor like actually restore himself, the huge force lightning, all of the ships, in Star Wars, like when people slow them down, like zoomed in, you can see all these ships from like Rebels, from Clone Wars, like all this stuff, all of them coming to save it. Like it was an amazing finale. I love that. It was really good. It was like a, love letter to Star Wars, and I appreciate that. I see the movie's problems, but I feel like there's way more good in it than bad. So that's why I put the Rise of Skywalker where it is.